All right, boys, let's go.
All right, so we're back with another Northeast Offshore report, and finally, I have gotten some deck boots on the tuna grounds, so to speak, a couple times over the past week. The first time I went out with Captain Rob Taylor last Thursday, and this was a trip that I booked. I put this date on the calendar in February, and you get so you don't know if the fish are going to be there, if the weather's going to work out. But the idea behind this trip, it never works out.
Dude, you and I did the same thing in the early podcast season. Is we have a captain and it's like, I need to fish with this guy this year, and would get a date on the calendar like way out in advance. And yes, they typically never pan out.
If you'll notice, like I've had that date on the books for 5 months, and last year we always talked about our big Helen H. Canyon trip. Everyone were like, can't wait to go on the Helen H. And then it gets canceled. So I didn't mention it at all. The curse of like talking too much about a trip before the trip. So anyhow, this one comes off. The weather looks good. And I brought my dad out there. I brought Big Jim out there. He'd never been tuna fishing. And part of that's because he is very susceptible to seasickness.
Love Big Jim.
Throughout, he was never a big fisherman. He kind of
He appeased you.
He appeased me by going fishing, but he suffered through some horrific trips, even tog fishing.
I'm sure.
Getting seasick. But he tried the patch. It worked out for him, and we got out there on the grounds. And the fishing was it was good. It was not great. So the first thing that happened is we went out to the gully where Rob had been for a few days, or maybe over a week, catching some pretty good fish. There'd been a bit of a quiet jig bite there that guys had been on leading up to this day. I know word has gotten out in the week since. But we got out there, and it's just first light. It's glass calm, and he stops real quick, and he looks, and he goes, this water's changed. He goes, he had the very kind of greener. No, I mean, that's something that's a serious thing that you look at when you're an offshore fisherman. You see the color of the water.
I mean, obviously, yeah,
but
it probably noticed it before anyone thought to even
I think I was looking at the sky.
Yeah.
But anyhow, he looks at the water. He's like, this water's changed here. It's more blue. It's more of canyon water as opposed to the green water where he'd been finding all the sand eels and the whales and the bluefin.
That same green water everyone was complaining about because the fishing was tough.
Exactly. Oh, yeah, you always have to have some sort of excuse for why the fishing's not good. The water's too blue, it's too green, it's too purple. But anyhow, so no sooner does he say this is blue canyon water than I look and I see just a pair of triangles out there just kind of going along. I'm like, is that, it's been a couple years since I've seen a white marlin, but I'm pretty sure that's a white marlin. Nobody else saw it. It sank down before anybody else could see it, so no one believed me.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm pretty sure that was a white marlin back there. They're like, oh, maybe, could be, could have been a bird too. So we go about another 100 yards. There's another one, and I'm like, that's definitely a white marlin. And Robbie's like, yeah, there it is. He gets the boat into position. Of course, we're never prepared for it. We talk. Last couple of weeks, we've been talking about the chance to catch a white marlin on spinning tackle, pitching a bait to it. This was a tuna trip, so we're not really thinking along those lines. And the closest thing we had to pitch at it was a pink Ronzi. So I grab that, I throw it at it, and I put it right. I tickled the tip of his bill. I hit him right on his long, pointy nose.
A good placement then.
Little
tight.
A little bit too tight. It would have been like somebody just slapping me in the face with a cheesesteak.
You'd eat that.
Yeah, eventually I'd be startled first though.
Okay.
But anyway, he didn't seem to spook. He turned on it, and sank down with it, and then came back up. So I retrieved.
What was Robbie saying in your ear? Because he was right over you, coaching you into. To make that happen.
He was very nice about my too close cast initially, but it came back up. He goes, okay. He goes, how about this time lead it a little bit more? So I did. I got the next cast maybe 10, 15 feet in front of it, pop it a little bit, and you can tell he saw it. He turned to it, and Rob goes, let it sink. Just let it sink. He'll eat it on the way down. The fish disappears. All of a sudden, the rod just loads, and I kind of lift, straightens back out, bring the Ronzi in. The fish comes back up. So he tried to eat it, but could not. They eat things in such kind of a unique way.
Very weird, very tough fish to hook.
What
did Rob say you should have done? I mean, you felt the rod load and you went to pull back to set the
I
hook
didn't do
a
crazy Bassmaster hook set. I did a kind of a slow trying to lock it in. So
yeah.
I think that was probably the right move, but the way they eat, he said, what might have happened is that the bill hit the line or something like that. That the fish never really.
Did he give you any advice for the next time that happens? Because I'm curious.
He didn't.
No,
It just
all right.
I don't. I mean, that's not the bait you want to be throwing at them.
No,
you want either a
I
live
get it.
bait or dead bait or weightless soft plastic. So that fish showed interest. I mean, he came right back up. We could have taken 100 casts at him. He showed kind of decreasing interest with
Yeah.
each cast, but he didn't spook. Then we saw one more, and that one did spook. I led that. I still even led that one a little bit, and as soon as the lure touched down, that one took off. So there was a good amount of white marlin there in that
cool.
that water in the gully, but no tuna. And guys, we're not seeing birds, not seeing whales, not seeing any bait on the sounder. So we pushed a little bit west, and then we came into tons of life. So many, tons of whales. There were all the birds, the tuna chicks and the shearwaters, and dolphins. So you had everything there. Saw just a bright red line of bait on the bottom. And it turned out that bait was pretty big, 6 to 7 inch sand eels, and they were so thick that at times you could not get your jig through them without snagging 1 or 2 sand eels on the single assist hooks. So you knew everything was there. The table was set. When we first approached that, everybody drops. So 3 guys. It was my dad, my good buddy Jerry, and Jerry's son Tyler. And the 3 of them dropped Ronzis, and I dropped a metal. I hit the bottom first because the metal sinks faster, and I start jigging up. Nothing happens yet. Those guys, the Ronzis, get to like the last 20 feet of the water column, and all 3 rods go down. I'm like, oh my, like, why did I pick up the metal? So it tripled up, and I'm like, oh man, this is going to be pretty incredible. I'm jigging like crazy. Then Jerry loses his, my dad loses his, and Tyler, the 12-year-old, he's stuck to his. It's just taking a ton of line. And he passes it off. We kind of do the little merry-go-round with the rod, but it's not feeling quite right. Jerry comes back without a Ronzi. My dad's comes back, and nobody notices it right away, but it's a little bit slashed. Here it was a triple header of sharks. Oh. So this was a big brown shark, and man, it chewed up probably 20 minutes trying to get this thing close enough to the boat where you could grab the leader and break it off.
And Robbie put all the Ronzis away.
Not yet. So we moved a little bit, found something else. He said, okay, let's get out of this area. Moved around, saw stuff he liked on the fish finder again, among all the whales and the birds and the bait. Dropped down again, another shark triple header, and at this point we're out. What is that?
$150.
Yeah, worth of Ronzis and heads and stuff. So Rob takes off the Ronzis, says everybody drop metal at this point. 2 whales, but some bait, small life, so way less life. That's going to attract fewer anglers, but there was bait there, and that's where we ended up. We did catch 3 tuna by the end of the day jigging.
Nice. You ended up 3 for 4. Is that right? Your dad hooked a big one, right?
Yeah, my dad dropped a big one. I dropped one. Both of my hits came on the drop with metal, so I'm dropping the first one. It hit so close to the boat. I'm just dropping it. It had to be 20 feet down, and I just look, and the line's going straight down. Then all of a sudden, it just starts going. The line just like veers off in a crazy direction, and it was one of those things where I wasn't expecting it. I'm like.
Oh?
Like, well, that's weird, And then I fouled up the hooks. When that happens, it's very important, and Rob emphasized this. He goes, if you get bit on the drop, do not try to set the hook by lifting the rod. He said, just flip the reel in the gear and reel fast. You got to get all that slack out of the line. All you're going to do by lifting the rod is remove enough slack to let that tuna know something's wrong and spit out the jig. So the next time that happened, I got bit on the drop again. Reeled in the slack and landed like a 45-inch bluefin. So we got two fish in the mid 40-inch range, another 30-incher. Other boats out in the area, Captain John McMurray of One More Cast, he was out there. His guys got a 70-incher. And then we saw a lot of boats get like these 30-inchers. So some real, got some small ones out there in the mix.
Fish.
And but it was
like that 2 years ago out south. It was like you didn't know if you were going to hook a 30 or 40-incher, a 700-pounder, or a 50 or 60-inch fish. It was a little all over the map.
So it was a fun day all in all. We ended up keeping the 2 mid 40-inch bluefin, and that was that, dude. So it's been building in the days since. It seems like things are getting a little bit more consistent down south. But before that, we want to start all the way down south off Ocean City, Maryland. But a quick reminder that the Northeast Offshore Report is brought to you by SiriusXM Marine. Fish mapping is SiriusXM Marine's most comprehensive plan, and it's available on your boat's display, and it also includes access on your phone or tablet with the fish mapping app. Sirius anglers need every advantage available, and SiriusXM marks the spot where bait fish gather and game fish hunt. Learn more at SiriusXM.com/fish mapping. The Northeast Offshore Report is also brought to you by Garmin Marine. Check out the Panoptix PS70 stainless steel through-hole transducer. It's powered by Garmin Rapid Return Sonar, which gives you live sonar views up to 1,000 feet below the surface. See fish live, catch fish deep, Garmin.com. And last but not least, this report is brought to you by Canyon Runner, who we're going to hear from in a little bit with their awesome report. All right, so I started this week talking to the folks down at Atlantic Tackle, to Rusty and Atlantic Tackle. They're out of Ocean City, Maryland. And he said the billfish he hasn't heard quite as much. They had a pretty good white marlin bite. He said the only bill fishing he really heard about recently down there was the big 588-pound blue marlin weighed in during the, I think it was the Big Fish Classic, one of the recent tournaments down that way. The tuna fishing, I guess, has been pretty steady, but it's been a chunk bite. You know, guys going out on day trips to the canyons, the southern canyons, are bringing a whole load of butterfish and sardines and coming home with a couple tuna.
Cool.
I asked him, I was surprised that it was a daytime bite, because I usually think of chunk bites being kind of a nighttime thing until you get later into the fall, but it sounds like maybe the tuna are a little bit spread out, or the bait spread out, so guys are using chunks to kind of concentrate the bait, give themselves a better shot. So that was pretty good to hear. Moving up the coast a little bit, Matt at the Real Seat said the yellowfin bite that had been really good, especially on the midshore ground, seems to be thinning out. He said there's some in the Hudson, but the great yellowfin fishing we had a little bit earlier in the summer seems to be quieting down, at least for the moment. He said big eye fishing in the northern canyons has been slow for the last couple weeks. He's hearing about more of them down south in some of the southern canyons. The best show in town in New Jersey is Bluefin tuna from the shipping lanes out to Little Italy, so looking around 20 miles out to maybe 30, 40 miles out. So relatively close for the bluefin, and those are bigger ones. Those are fish at the low end, they're going to be 50 inches. At the high end, 90 to 100 inches. He said the best tactic for catching them for most boats has been dead sticked, straight tail soft plastic. So think a Ronzi or the hot bait down there this year has been the no live bait needed, straight tail plastic. He said 3 ounce to 6 ounce heads, and Ronzis are one of those baits where just do less with it. You know, the rocking of the boat is going to make that look good. So get that to the depth where you're seeing the bait or marking the fish, and it's going to do the rest of the work for you. Now, I know guys are also getting them on some poppers when they encounter topwater feeds out there. Some pretty dramatic posts this week. Billy Hayes, who's a tuna fishing fanatic from down in New Jersey, posted a really cool video of a giant tuna eating a popper boat side. That was, I think, over the last couple weeks.
That's awesome. It doesn't get any more visual than that, man.
It was that was a pretty wild. I mean, any tuna topwater eat is cool to see. This one happened about 10 feet off the transom, so it was pretty insane. Off Montauk, moving up to Long Island, Mike at Star Island Marina in Montauk said there's been plenty of giants 15 miles off the point there, fish from 400 to 500 pounds and up, live mackerel, live bluefish. That's been catching the fish there. There's been some smaller fish on the troll, but mainly the most consistent thing happening is the giant bite. For the canyons, he said, you've got to go east. You want to go offshore, you've got to take the ride. He said from hydro, east has been best. There's been plenty of yellowfin tuna and big eye in those eastern canyons.
Yeah, it's been that's been the jam. I had a couple shots to get out to the canyons. I had a decline, unfortunately, but my buddy Matt Fronius was out on the Miss Madeline that Friday to Saturday window, and I mean, I wasn't able to help catch the fish, but we put on a pretty epic feed last night for a Monday where we did yellowfin a bunch of different ways. We made pizzas, did some sushi, rolls.
It tastes a little bitter.
It did not taste the same as when you harvest it yourself.
That's it, not to rub it in.
But he said it was fairly slow. They tried some day dropping. They came tight on a sword, came unbuttoned. They didn't really. They put the old college try. They kind of went through the motions. They really wanted to try to get a swordfish, and once that kind of petered out, the troll bite was like spotty. But then his good buddy, Willie Hatch from the Mashaka rolls up. Everyone's catching like 40-pound yellowfin and smaller. He puts out some baits, and next thing you know, he's got like, a wolf pack of 70, 80-pound yellowfin on the deck. And then, when they were swordfishing, within a half hour from starting, he's like, oh, nice 100-pound sword on the boat, fellas. Like his typical magic trick. Everyone's catching smaller fish. He catches bigger ones. But, it seems to be a little kind of spotty. The troll bite has not been as consistent as it's been. There's still that random wolf pack of big eyes that are surprising some people, but that hasn't been as consistent. Um, and I got kind of some canyon stuff mixed in from a lot of different sources.
Now, do you think we're kind of hitting that like mid-August, that late July, early August little bit of lull where we're waiting for a tropical storm to shake things up, or what's
I
happening
like
here?
to think that's why I didn't cause World War III at the DiCicci household when the wife was like, no, I've had no camps for kids. I've been saddled with them since I cast, so you not go, please. I didn't go. And that was the thing that made me feel a little better. I'm like, feels like that August doldrum where the water is just kind of not concentrated.
How many fish did Matt catch overall?
I don't know what he did for numbers. It was an underwhelming trip. They had some action. It wasn't like they filled the boat and went home. They actually kind of cut it short because it was a little quiet and there was some weather coming in.
It seems like in the days since my trip with Captain Rob Taylor that there has been more consistency down there. And part of that also is more boats getting down there and getting out there. It had been slow for a little bit, so I think guys were pretty spread out. Now that the word has kind of trickled out over the last couple weeks, more boats are getting there. I know Liam O'Neill from our office here, he was out and he said approaching the spot in the darkness, it looked like a small city out there with all the boats. So there's a lot of boats out there, and that can have a negative effect on the fishing. But also does help you give a baseline of what's everybody doing.
He got his first tuna on that trip. He was out with Nick Flanagan and Brennan Pryor on the Everjack out of Tiverton, Rhode Island. And, he got to Tuna Ridge first light and took a little nap on the way out, which is never a bad take. And then he's like he said, he was greeted by that city of tuna fishermen out there. And they basically saw boats from Tuna Ridge all the way up to the gully. They started to jig just before first light, broke off 2 on the jig around 6:30, depth between 160 and 170 feet, and after that they put the spread out for 20 minutes, hooked into a 60-pound bluefin, landed the first tuna on the Everjack, and his first tuna of all time, which is pretty awesome. And they were headed back by 9 a.m., which is always that kind of humble brag when it's like, yeah, we were headed back to the dock by 9.
You still got a full day ahead of you. I come home from those trips, my wife makes me mow the lawn, so I'd like to stay out a little bit later.
I had another chance to get out.
Let's not fill this report with all Cheech's missed opportunities.
I mean, I'm still kind of rolling through the report. This game plan was to head out of the New Bedford area, New Beige, and they kind of overnighted in that same area. They thought they would, make bait, kind of soak some bait at night, and see if they could get a tuna before the sun came up. They encountered a lot of squid and butterfish, which are great tuna baits. They didn't mark any fish out overnight, and then when the gray light came, they started to, troll east, towards behind the vineyard and stuff. Ended up having a tuna air out on their daisy chain of, squid daisy chain right around the Gordon's Gully area. Didn't come tight on it, but their buddy boat went in a little bit of a different direction and ended up just south of the dump where they went 7 for 9. But
on the troll?
On the troll. And again, we've been hearing a lot about the smaller bluefin kind of roaming around the dump. And the biggest was at 44 inches.
So that's interesting you mentioned that the squid and butterfish, and those are two baits that you associate with yellowfin tuna moving in.
Yeah.
And that was something that Rob Taylor said. He said, based on what he's seeing on the water temperatures, on the water quality out there, he thinks that things are setting up to have that inshore push of yellowfin like we've seen over the last couple of years in the area. Has not really happened yet. So it seems like maybe we're trending in that direction right now. Hearing about the squid and butterfish, which are baits that hold a little bit, especially later on, hold higher in the water column, seem to attract more yellowfin. I mean, the bluefin, everything eats sand eels. The yellowfin eats sand eels too. But those two baits, the water quality you see with them tends to, you think, more yellowfin tuna. So hopefully that happens, because it was great when we had that mix of them last year on those grounds.
On that note, Robbie had made that kind of his prediction, and I started to look into it. So, just kind of show why I agree with that call, because I got my Sirius fish mapping app up, and I'm going to toggle on the sea surface temperature front strength, sea surface temperature contours, and we'll put on the plankton front strength too, which doesn't come into play as much here. But by looking at that area south of the vineyard, there's two areas that catch my eye of what's going to happen. And I'm going to throw on the ocean currents as well. So as you zoom into that area, like where that yellowfin feed mixed in with bluefin kind of happened, it's setting up for exactly that. So when I heard of squid and butterfish on that overnight trip, we know there's sand eels in there. You look at this and you have that 71, and for me, it's been 70 degrees and up has been kind of that yellowfin. You know, if I'm looking for a mix of bluefin and yellowfin, I want to find 70 to 73 degree water inshore. Now you obviously know you'll encounter them in mid to high 60 degree water, but that seems to be the ticket south of the of Block and south of the vineyard, right? You were going to say something?
Yeah, they seem to like that. They have no problem with 60 water in the 60s.
Yeah.
That's especially in the fall when the bait's real thick and they're
Yep.
on their way out. You find plenty of yellowfin in 60, 66 to 70 degree water. But this time of year when they're first moving in, you find that water over 70 degrees.
So a couple of things that I'm going to pull up here. You look at the sea surface temperature front strength, and it's really strong, pushing right into those inshore grounds. It's scoring at a 3. And that 71.6 degree, temperature contour, and the currents are pushing that right up into those grounds of the Suffolk, Tuna Ridge, Ryan's Horn, that area. And that, to me, seems like you're going to start hearing in this next report that we give next week a mix of bluefin and yellowfin down there. Right now, it's 71.6 degree water incoming, kind of, 69.8 degrees right in there right now. But with that front strength and the direction of the currents, that looks like it's going to shape up to give us what I've been hoping for pretty soon here. And then you look at the dump area, and it's that same dynamic. You got 71.6 degrees right in the heart of the dump right now, and you got a strong sea surface temperature front strength pushing in there, and that's shaping up to be the case there. And I've already heard of some really nice yellowfin, nicer than our canyons have had, caught this last week in the dump. So hopefully it's all coming together.
Yeah, you could not do a report last year without mentioning the dump at like 30 times. Like that's where all the action was. This year have not heard as much. It's been all further west. But the season's still young. August is kind of the prime time for that area, that south of the vineyard area. At least the last couple seasons it has been.
So keeping it in that same general area, one of the former report spotlights from the socials, Patrick Herguth, I'm probably not pronouncing that right. Him and I have kind of stayed in touch. He's kept me in the loop on some of his trips, and he started at the Inside Fingers heading due south east of the dump. And had plenty of action on bluefin, all unders, same as many have reported in that dump area. So it seems to be a mix of bluefin. But if we jump up here, I talked to Connor from Monahan's Marine, and he gave me kind of a really big mix of a report. He just got back from the Edge Friday, Saturday. They got a sword overnight in Atlantis. Sword fishing is picked up, he said. The troll bite seems to have slowed down, so he's echoing what we've heard from a lot of people. He talked to a guy that hit what looked like a nice break out in the Lydonia Powell area. He didn't find it as hard as, his temp charts kind of made it seem. It was really spread out. There was some really cold water pushing up some, juicy canyon water, but the break was very gradual, and it was kind of Deadsville out there. They actually had to kind of call an audible after going that far to find some fish to save their trip. He's reporting that he heard of some random wolf packs saving trips out there that were still popping off in the deep water at random. And he encountered the same, 40-pound class yellowfin. They started at West Atlantis, went to East Atlantis, couple of yellowfin on the troll up to 40 pounds. They marked some bait pretty deep with what looked like big eyes on them. They got some mahis on the pots, and his take was once that thermocline started to get higher in the water column, that's when you maybe have a shot at those big eyes coming up and to eat troll baits.
How deep were they? Too deep for a jig?
No, I don't think so, because I think he said that he likes to see it. I forget what he said, but I mean, how's too deep for a jig. It wasn't.
500.
Yeah, it wasn't going to be below that. But yeah, that's something I want to take a stab at. We missed that window. I feel like it was a big eye beatdown out there for the first.
Not yet. Not yet. Because you know what? A couple years ago, there was an incredible big eye bite in fishtails, and it was happening on the chunk. It was happening at night, and that's when guys were getting them on the jigs as well. Tons of yellowfin in there. So September is typically the best month. We've not approached the best month yet. September is the best. That's when things really happen, both midshore and offshore. So as slow, I wouldn't call it slow. I'd say middle of the road. It's been fair to Midland this season, and but things are certainly trending in the right direction. One area that it has been pretty slow has been out east of Chatham, and that is one of those spots that year after year that is like, sure as the sun will rise, the bluefin will be east of Chatham. Like it's just, you've got the convergence of the cold water coming down from the Gulf of Maine, and then the warmer water coming out from south at Cape Cod. Tons of bait converges there. The Regal Sword, Crab Ledge, all these historically productive spots, and it's been a little bit quieter to the point where even asking what's been happening, there hadn't been guys going in that direction. You hadn't heard very much. But I actually went out there on Saturday with Devin Acton, who is the author of the Weekly Salvage newsletter. Also, he runs the Blow and We Goin' account on Instagram, and he runs out of Chatham. We got out there at first light. It was glass calm, and we just kind of got there. Like you get out the cut, you look for a little bit, situate, and like boom, saw a tuna come up. So we throw like right away. Saw some positive signs. Saw a bluefin breaking out there on some bait. Threw some poppers, nothing happened. Moved a little bit north and came into some of the craziest whale feeds I've ever seen. Like, we're maybe within a couple miles of the beach, and you have really tight kind of bubble feeding whales all coming up on the surface. Really cool to see that. And
what class fish were the breakers that you saw? Could you tell?
I only saw one fish, and it looked like it was, I would say, in the high. It's impossible. I think they always tend to be a little bit bigger than you think they are. I would say somewhere between 60 and mid 70 inches. Like it looked like it was a big but still possibly recreational sized fish. Didn't look like a giant. So we get in these whales. We're setting up some drifts. One boat out there trolling ballyhoo hooked up with a 63-inch fish, which was great. We didn't have any trolling gear on the boat, so we were looking to jig some bait. We ended up getting a mackerel. Set that out there, and as the mackerel's drifting, why not throw the Ron Z out? And I hooked up, and man, it became apparent pretty quickly that this was the wrong size of fish that we wanted. I've never seen that much metal on my spool since I bought it, and we were down to just a handful of wraps by the time we could start the boat and get some of this line back. We ended up having the fish on for about maybe 20, 30 minutes. I passed the rod off to Devin. He fought it for a bit, and then eventually it broke right at the leader.
Spin?
Spinning tackle, yep.
18K Stella?
No, it was a 14K twin power.
Okay.
So a little bit lighter on the gear side for that type of fish, but I had the right rod for it.
Sure.
That's why today I am shopping for an 18K Stella or maybe a Saltiga. As soon as we finish this podcast, I'm going to go out there and maybe treat Jim to a little something. But
nice.
A little bit later, we set up another drift. Devin hooks a striper on the Ron Z. We kind of were coming to some striper schools to the point that we did get some more mackerel, and they would not last long before the stripers would just kill them on you. And it's
That's
funny to think
part about that stretch.
Funny to think of stripers being a nuisance, but they tend to be in that situation where you've got a few precious live baits that took you 2 hours to get 4 of them in the well, and then the bass in 15 minutes they've managed to end them all. So Devin hooks a bass on the Ron Z, flips it out again, hits bottom, jigs it a couple times, boom, he's onto a big tuna. Now this one ended up breaking off far down in the braid, and when he went to redo his FG knot, the braid broke again, so it appeared that maybe he had just spooled that reel, and it happens. Sometimes you get a bad batch of braid, and that is a tough way to figure that out. But the good news is he went out the following day, got it done, got on the board east of Chatham. So that was on.
That's exciting.
Yeah, and he said he heard of a lot more bites out in that direction on. This was Sunday, and he managed to jig up some herring. So some sea herring were out there, and he said the fish he caught had sea herring in it. That could be a very positive sign
That
of
could be
things
some
to
fuel
come.
for that area. I heard from a good buddy of ours, Captain Cam Crocker, and he went on a little bit of a mission on Saturday looking for a certain flatfish, and sent me a dish with some nice thick fillets, and I said, codfish? He goes, no, haddock, LOL.
Oh.
So he didn't get that done, but he did see some wreck fish busting water in the just north of the cut, so like just shy of that crab ledge area. So there is some activity to report out east, but I kind of want to circle back to the end of the report I got from Connor from Monahan's Marine. Now, they're based out of Weymouth. They just put a whole new tackle section into their shop.
Great
with an
shop.
expansion there. It's always been a great shop. It was my favorite childhood shop to visit growing up nearby in Hull. But he had said the dump has had some bigger yellowfin tuna to 60 pounds. It's been kind of, dead smack dab in the middle of the dump. It's been grease calm in there. They've been milling around. It sounds a lot like what we may have encountered when we filmed that Poppin' episode, where the fish are just milling around. They're, flashing at certain times, but no all-out feeds.
They were eating really small bait when we were out there last year. Just
Yeah.
kind of these 2-inch juvenile hake. And we did hear about some juvenile hake out, I think maybe it was off Jersey already this year. It's happened at some point this year already.
Hopefully that's setting up, because that was a blast. And
that was a very cool bite.
And he basically echoed the same thing with a mix of small bluefin tuna in the mix out there. South of the vineyard, in the common areas, which is kind of like a triangle between the star, the gully, the inside fingers.
So you're saying Gordon's Gully?
Yeah, Gordon's.
So
Gully.
there's two gullies out there. There's the gully, and then Gordon at some point found his gully, realized the name was tamed, so he tacked his name at the front of it. But you could confuse it. Gordon's Gully is very close to Martha's Vineyard.
Yep.
Easy, like, morning day trip for the Cape.
Due straight south from Muskega Channel from the Hooter Buoy. Basically.
Whereas Gordon's Gully's a pretty good poke west if you're leaving from Cape Cod.
Yep.
So a little bit, if you're hearing a fish at the Gully, Block Island, Gordon's Gully, Martha's Vineyard.
It's between the vineyard and Block Island, basically.
One of these times I'm going to figure out who all these people were. Who's Tom's Canyon? Why was the Poor Man's Canyon the Poor Man's Canyon? Who the hell was Gordon? And why did he like gullies?
It sounds pretty cool. I knew a guy that claimed a lot of naming of popular fishing spots. He's 100 years old almost. I'm going to leave the name out, but like he told me about.
You got to give us a little more information if you're going to make a claim like that.
He's in the industry. He works for a marine brand that's based out of Rhode Island.
And what does he claim to have named? Give me an example.
Dude, you know my memory. I don't remember the specifics. I will find out. All right, I will find out, Jim. I'm still.
You can't put stuff out there without a little bit more to back it out.
I will find out. I'll get specifics. I promise. Connor, back at Monahan's, excited to fish that inshore bluefin scene. It's been playing out with a lot of guys, kind of encountering them with rocky coastline backdrops while they're out, targeting stripers, fishing the pogie schools. It's been happening from Scituate to the Nahant area, which is super cool. Shallow water deal. That's kind of what he's got his sights set on next, and I'm sure we'll get a report from him over this next week.
I mean, that's something that's been happening since, I want to say, the beginning of July. I
Yeah.
know Brian Coombs has been out there and encountered multiple bluefin tuna while striper fishing, to the point that there's been enough of them out there that in his little arsenal he's got a bigger, some bigger heavy artillery ready to go in case they do encounter a bluefin tuna. And Robbie Tartaglia, who works with us, he was out striper fishing in that area. Off the South Shore of Massachusetts, and striper fishing was tremendous. And then they saw some tuna on top, or I think it was a Snapshot Charter. So Captain Eric Coolin, tremendous photographer. We've run a lot of his photography in On the Water magazine.
Took some sick shots.
They saw some tuna on top. They had a siren ready to go on a pretty stout setup. Got a cast into it, hooked up, and it sounds like they fought that fish for a little bit, to the point they were calling in reinforcements from other boats to help them fight that fish. They got it close enough to get some really, really cool photos. We'll put some of those in here. We'll share some on the Water Magazine's Instagram probably this week. But they got it close enough, and then ultimately, I think what happened is it got under the boat and it broke the rod. And when the rod broke, it took all the cushion out of the system, and then the leader and line was next.
That's the worst part about that is losing a siren, man.
Yeah, that's pretty tough.
That's a bad beat. Breaking off with the I talked to Joe from Fisherman's Outfitter in Gloucester. He basically
the Boston
said,
coming out today,
huh?
You got the accent really.
Well, I got to play the part, man.
All
It's
right.
like, Southern Jeffries in Western Side has been kind of quiet, more of a pick than anything, but there's been fish there. There's been plenty of jumpers, but again, it's been a pick of commercial fish. The jumpers that have been spotted have typically been right on the cusp of that wreck, small commercial size fish.
I do have something. Captain Jack Patrickin, who Time
Yeah,
Flies Charters,
yeah.
he mentioned that he's been out mackerel fishing. He commercially fishes for mackerel, and he said he's been seeing a lot of recreational size tuna in his area, and that's somebody who, he does
Same
enough
neck of the woods.
commercial
Yeah.
tuna fishing up there that he, especially he's on Wicked Tuna, that he said if he's spotting them and knows they're recreational size fish, and the odds are those are
That's
that
awesome.
size. So, yeah, you've got some smaller fun size tuna up
Yeah.
that way. So that's
So
pretty good.
Joe had said, that the afternoon has been the time for that, pogie show where they're getting blasted by tuna. There's been some mackerel in the mix. It's been mainly off in the haunt in that general area, and he said that every now and again you'll get your hopes up and it will just be porpoises, but stick it out. Afternoons has been where it's been most common. Most of the guys that he talks to, obviously being, Fisherman's Outfitter, they're a big supplier for the commercial fleet. They're mostly set up on bait, up and down surface feeds, lots of porpoises in the mix. And then he said Stellwagen has mostly larger fish. Again, a bait bite, setting up on the edges of the move. He says you can get into the bait where it's consistent, but your best bet is to get bait from that area and move to the edge and get your baits kind of up and down the water column, a deep bait, a mid-column bait, a floater, and you have less to compete with, but rather than putting it in the mix of all the bait. And he goes, there's less unsavory characters on the edge just milling around where there isn't all that bait, meaning sharks, dogfish, he said it's a bait and weight game. Get on your numbers and pick your spot on the edge and just wait it out, and you'll typically get a bite. He said the bait has been a mix: herring, max, whiting. Some days making bait has been really easy. Other days the mackerel are tough to find, but you can always count on whiting. And when you're doing that, you have the opportunity to luck into some herring, which are great baits as well.
Yeah, whiting
as
are
the
a great
random
bait.
mackerel.
What I hear about them is that they come from such cold water that they don't stay well in the live well.
Malutza, my dad used to call them.
So if you get a malutza, you want put it out on the down rod on the deep bait. Right
Yeah,
away. Don't expect that thing to live in a live well all day.
That's very true. They do not hold up all that well. Moving even further north, I talked to Captain Bob from Seacoast, New Hampshire Sport Fishing. He said the Pogie schools have been disappearing, or were disappearing midweek last week, which has shuffled his program. He's having some action inshore in about 140-ish feet of water down near the Mass border, so he's kind of heading towards that in the haunt area. There's a few folks fishing them. A buddy boat lost a good one there yesterday. He said northeast Chatham has had great whale activity to target, and it's all commercial grade fish though. And finally, he said southern Jeffries and Pigeon Hill and north of the Curl, all these places only stick around if there is ample bait on the bottom, 20 feet of water or so. He's like, that's what you want to find. That's what you want to look for. If you get juvenile max up high, be ready to cast at surface feeds at a moment's notice of wreck fish kind of popping out of nowhere. He said it happens very fast. He's going to be busy going forward after he got weathered out the last 2 days. So he's fishing today forward. So looking forward to hearing his report moving into next week. But I also talked to a buddy of mine that does a lot of ground fish. Spends a lot of time ground fishing out of South Portland, Maine. And he had some fish crash right near the boat as they were bailing whiting and nice haddock. He actually encountered some fish on Sunday, putting eyes on wreck bluefin on the southern and southeast edge of Platts Bank, that is. A lot of guys set up there for giants. It's a known giant spot, but he saw some smaller fish. And again, on the eastern deep water side of Jeffries, in the deep water, it's not really a spot where a lot of guys will set up and giant fish. And he can't recall seeing anybody spend time out there, but he saw some 50 to 60 inch class fish with some 400 pounders mixed in, airing out on bait, which got him excited because he's a tuna guy that does a lot of ground fishing. Tuna guy at heart. He hasn't been doing it as much of late. So that was the report that kind of brought us through Maine. And I'm going to kind of bring it all the way back down south for the social report highlight. This one is from Michael Pugsley, reporting on Northeast Offshore Pelagic Reports. He said he went out solo on Saturday. He broke Cape May Inlet around 6:30 a.m. and headed out to check some pots and troll. He found a decent pot line. Water temperature was about 75 degrees and checked about 6 pots that had no life on them. Then he threw out the trolling gear and didn't get a single bite. He moved inshore to an area at about 90 feet of water with no boats around for miles. He put out the starboard wide tracker. It wasn't white, I don't know what color it was, and was setting the port side tracker when the first rod started screaming. Put the boat in idle, locked the drag down. He was dumping the spool, turned the boat around and chased him after, to gain back what he had lost. Fought the fish for an hour and a half before finally getting it in the boat. After putting a gaff, he pulled the gaff on the headshot on the first gaff, almost pulled another gaff head, and then had to work a rope down to its body past its pec fins to make sure he didn't lose it. Hauled it into the boat with that. It measured around 63, 64 inches from lower jaw to fork and weighed about 134 pounds. He's caught yellowfin before, but that was his first bluefin. Sound like it gave him a run for his money. Pretty cool to do that solo. Awesome report, Michael. We'll have the pictures in here to check out. That's pretty badass to go out and get it done on your own.
It's pretty awesome. When you said you had your social report from down south, I thought for a second you were going to talk about the tin boat bluefin tuna that was circulating last week.
That one smelled funny right off the rip, Jim.
It did. So there was a post went on circulated social media. A lot of places shared it. Saw a sunglass company was trying to give this guy free shades and ended up in the Asbury Park Press. Like, it got some serious coverage. And then a couple days later, he posts, the same guy posts again that, oh, sorry, it was just supposed to be a joke. It went out of control.
Got out of hand. The Asbury Park Press gave it some credit. It gave it a sprinkle of credibility, and that was kind of like, oh, maybe it wasn't.
That a little on the water's journalistic standards were higher than an actual newspaper.
Yeah, it didn't smell right. So the fish just looked like, it looked embarrassed to be in the picture. Like the look on the fish's face.
I think there's more to the story even than we've been given so far, even calling it a hoax. But it turns out that he has withdrawn his claim of catching a bluefin tuna in a tin boat. I don't think it's impossible.
The Silver Bullet.
Yes.
The tin boat had its own name. It's well known around those parts, I've gathered.
But anyhow, who knows what the truth is, but apparently we can... There's the first tin boat bluefin tuna that's still up for grabs if somebody wants to go out.
It's definitely happened before. It has to have happened before. If somebody caught one out of P-Town or, out of Nova Scotia on a tin boat.
The guy 10 years ago got him out of the kayak. The guy from Chicago used to come out here with his kayak and troll for bluefin, and he caught him.
I love a good prank, Jim. But when it gets to that level, it's kind of like, I did this too good.
I think you just got to live with it. Or maybe I was wondering if maybe it did happen, but it didn't have the proper permitting on the vessel, so we had to backtrack that way. So maybe it's the old double fake. But moving on, we actually did not kick it to the Canyon Runner report this week. So why don't we end this week's offshore fishing report with the latest news from the Canyon Runner team?
Yeah, the Canyon Runner sport fishing team is here to help you catch fish. They offer coaching and concierge services, seminars, and a virtual captain system which will exponentially help increase your catches inshore, midshore, and out to the canyons. The report they provide gives you a sampling of what their virtual captain system looks like, which is serving as your co-captain. It provides you with all of the fish catching, and safety intel, including a built-in warning system and more. It gives you the ability to track over 400 member boats and Canyon Runner's own 15 pro staff boats in real time, extending your network up and down the coast, giving you the best play to make when you're prepping for an offshore trip. Check them out at www.canyonrunner.com, and we'll let them take it away and wrap this week's report up, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Hello, On the Water magazine. This is Dean Lambros from the Canyon Runner Sport Fishing Concierge and Coaching Service with our weekly fishing report recap. This week, we're going to be covering dates July 21st through July 28th. As you can see, it was a very busy week on BoatMap. A lot of fishing effort. We're going to take it right from the top. Start off with Maine, New Hampshire, Chatham, Massachusetts, Stellwagen Bank. It continues to still be a grind, unfortunately, for the bluefin tuna fishing, whether that's giants and schoolie bluefin. With the new National Marine Fisheries regulations and RFDs, restricted fishing days, we're seeing that the consistency just isn't there right now. But we are optimistic that fishing will improve as we start to get off this full moon cycle. Tide should subside, and we should see better and better fishing. Locally, off the Elizabeth Islands, Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, Rhode Island, we are starting to see a schoolie bluefin jig bite and some yellowfin tunas that are being caught on the troll and on the jig. This is going to be around Southern Dump area and Tuna Ridge. We continue to see that weather is still a problem, as it's been all season. So we're seeing a lot of fishing effort on the nice days and then not much fishing effort on the rough days. We had a couple of big tournaments this past week. So the canyon fishing was heavy with lots of fishing effort. Boats fishing from Hydrographer's Canyon all the way to the west towards the Hudson, with some fantastic double-digit big eye catches and double-digit yellowfin catches as well. As we work our way to the west, we also saw the canyons of the Fishtails, Dip, and Hudson producing great double-digit trips as well. The Hudson particularly was a unique situation this week, as we saw a lot of bait and krill, and we even had some jigging and popping guys come down and fish, and they were catching their fish on the jig up on the flats. Very unique, notable condition. Western Long Island and northern Jersey at this point is seeing a lack of school bluefin tuna and yellowfin tuna, but they're making up for it with the large, medium, and giant bluefin tuna bite we're seeing locally. It's going to be Western Long Island, northern Jersey, out to 15 nautical miles. These bites are all associated with the life, with both artificial, live bait, and trolling, all producing. Really incredible fishing. Nice to see that locally in New Jersey. I remember growing up as a kid hearing about these great tuna bites off Jersey, and we had not seen that recently or until recently, and it's just been a productive fishery local to the coast. As we move our way south, Barnegat Inlet to Virginia Beach, Ocean City, we continue to see lots of life midshore, but not many tunas caught. Very, very sporadic. We will see some boats in there chunking, I think, in the coming weeks, but the troll is just not produced. We work our way back out to the canyons from the Toms, Lindencolt, and even into the Wilmington Canyon. We saw nice double-digit catches of yellowfins and big eyes also available. Working south from the Poor Man's, Washington, Norfolk canyons, we saw some yellowfins sporadic and some big eye catches. And finally, earlier in the week, we saw a nice midshore bite develop local to the Washington Canyon, with double-digit yellowfins being trolled in a nice, clean, blue piece of water. And that is our weekly fishing report recap. One last thing, we saw great white marlin fishing in the deep from the Washington to the Wilmington canyons, which is an excellent development for the billfish tournaments, and an influx of dolphin from the Norfolk to Wilmington canyons. Thank you. This is Dean Lambros from the Canyon Runner Sport Fishing Concierge and Coaching Group.